Nothing we say is investment advice. Please pause on all 3 pages of this disclaimer and read it.
Greetings, Algo Artisans. Pretty wild open today for the weekly market forecast. We're going to talk about Bitcoin, Solana, EURUSD, GBPUSD, USDJPY, USDCAD, GBPJPY, AUDJPY, AUDUSD, USDCHF, SP500 Futures, Dow Futures, NASDAQ Futures, gold, and silver. Before that, we're going to take a look at the data that's coming out this week. And even before we do that, take a look at the screen here. It says get your free algo. Link is in the description. Go to the description, grab your algo, give us your name, email, and I'll fire you back your new algo for free. Let's jump into the data right now. Tomorrow, Monday, we've got all day long German prelim CPI. So this is going to make the euro pretty tricky to trade because there's no specific time for this. So I might avoid trading the euro tomorrow. That's going to be a big metric for them. And then right before the European Open, the Aussies have their rate statement and cash rate, and that's the Tuesday European Open, by the way. Tuesday, 10 a.m. EST, we've got manufacturing PMI data and JOLTS job openings. That's going to affect the dollar. Wednesday, ADP non-farm employment change for the dollar. That's 8:15 a.m. EST. Thursday, right after the European Open, is the Swiss CPI. That's going to be a big number, and that's at 2:30 a.m. EST. Also, if you're trading oil, be careful. The OPEC JMMC meetings are going on this week as well. And then Thursday, 8:30 a.m. EST, as we do every week, we've got the unemployment claims. And then at 10 a.m., we have the ISM services. So that's the Purchasing Managers Index. Both of those can affect the dollar and just markets across the board. Friday is going to be pretty big stuff. At 8:30 a.m. EST, we've got Canada's unemployment data and then the USD's employment data as well. And then we have at 11:25 a.m. Fed Chair Powell speaks. So honestly, I probably won't trade at all on Friday. Not unless I'm trading overnight for the European Open, because that day is just going to be pretty difficult. I mean, I might scalp a little bit after 8:30 a.m. EST, but after that, I'll be pretty much done. Because once Powell starts speaking, who knows what's going to happen. Now let's jump into the charts. Okay, so here's Bitcoin right here, and this is looking to me like it broke. I know this was kind of a make or break right here, right at about 81,000 or so, and price has broken below. The futures, the NASDAQ in particular, that open was brutal, and I do expect that to continue to head down and drag Bitcoin down with it. We're going to look at the NASDAQ, but for the moment, I do see Bitcoin coming down. It's going to test what might be a support around here at about 80,000, 79.9. It might bounce up a little bit, grab liquidity, because once anything comes down that hard, it's going to want to flash back up pretty quick, but I think it'll be fast and head back down and start to go into the high 70s, if not below. I do have a couple of alternative movements here. We got a lot happening this week. Wednesday, Trump is going to do his tariffs. So as we talk about any of these charts, realize that Wednesday could be a wild card. Trump may decide not to do the tariffs. You know how things change really quickly. But Wednesday is supposed to be when a lot of tariffs roll out. And if that news changes, anything I say on these charts could be completely blown out of the water and not make any sense. But outside of any surprises, the charts that I have here are what I think will happen. And I just got a couple of alternative moves in the case that things do change, higher or lower, but this main route down to the high 70s and maybe even lower could go all the way down to the low 70s. 74 is a very important support for Bitcoin. If price goes there, I might look to scalp some longs or even buy in. But for the moment, this is what I see. Let's move on to Solana. Of course, similar to Bitcoin, Solana is going to be pretty bearish. Bitcoin's going to drag it down, and Solana tends to move a little more strongly than Bitcoin in either direction. So I do see a little bit of support sitting here at about 120. 120 is historically an important number for Solana. If you go back far enough, you'll see it bounces there a lot, and it's hanging out there right now. But I do expect Solana to either break down or come up and then head down after that. But mainly, I just expect sideways to down, and 110 and 100 are important supports for Solana as well. I will be looking to either scalp those or let that little bounce happen and short those. So for the moment, bearish on that. Let's take a look at EURUSD. Now this is looking pretty bullish, and of course this is the result of what's happening in markets across the board. So I think we will probably see sideways to up with the euro. Now there's a bit of an older range that happened back here last week, week before. I think price might hang out there and just kind of shake its way up. And again, tariff news and all of that might have the market a bit on the edge of its seat. So outside of that and any other surprises, I expect sideways to up, and probably good for scalping, not as good for swinging. And that's going to be this week as a whole anyway, because of the data coming out. Let's take a look at the cable, GBPUSD. Same kind of look, a little less bullish, sideways to up. probably going to be in this range, or it might float back down to this range depending on how things go. Mostly sideways to up, with the top probably going to be at around $1.30 or so. Let's take a look at USDJPY. JPY pairs are bearish as a whole. It's even gone down further than when I first drew this, and a lot of the reason is that when the stock market goes down, money goes into the JPY. So if the stock market continues to fall, then these charts will probably fall because JPY is on the other side of this. It's USDJPY, not JPYUSD. And as JPY gets stronger, in this case, this chart falls, and we should continue to see that happen. Support at about 148.17 yen and at about 147.36 yen. Price might bounce at those, but the stock market's going to have a lot to do with this. This is what I see happening. Stand by for the madness. Let's take a look at USDCAD, aka the loonie. And not so loony. I don't expect a lot out of this pair. It's actually a little more bullish than I thought it would be. USD probably acting as a bit of a safe haven right now as stocks are melting down. Money might be going a little bit into the dollar, but I do expect sideways to down. It might simply go sideways though, rather than sideways to down. But the algos say sideways to down, and that's what I expect. And again, the dotted line is the end of the week. This week I didn't stop the predictions early. Let's move on to the beast, GBPJPY. Yet another JPY pair. I have a small support here at about 192.01 yen and 190.68 yen. Price might bounce at one of those, but in the end I expect lower highs, lower lows, and maybe even a bottom out around that 197.10 by the end of the week. Let's go to AUDJPY. This one's even more bearish than the rest because the Aussie has been pretty weak. Aussie's on a massive downtrend, heading down since July of last year, really. So I do expect down, mostly sideways and down. We have a pretty strong support at 93.19 yen, but then we have another one down at 92.52, and 91.78 is a strong support. These others are there, but the stronger support is right here at 91.80, and that might be a place to go long, depending on what the rest of the market looks like. But we might not see that this week. We might. We'll see what happens with the markets. Let's take a look at AUDUSD. Aussie a little bit bearish. I expect sideways to down, not so much down, more sideways. And price could actually stay above 62.69 cents, right? It could bounce and just stay above, or kind of grind its way down like we've been seeing. Probably not too clean of a chart. I think I'll probably avoid this one outside of scalps, but that's what I expect on that. Let's go to the Swissy, USDCHF. This one kind of like an inverted EURUSD. I expect price to head down, but we do have a pretty strong support sitting right here at 87.58. That's a range that's been kind of created. Price might choose to bounce there because that's what it's done. And so we might see a nice opportunity to go long and scalp that right there. Otherwise, I do expect this to head down. And if it breaks out, then I just have it going down a little bit further based on fib levels. So maybe around 87.16 or so. That remains to be seen. Let's take a look at SP500 Futures. Oh, the humanity. Got a nice gap down on the open today. Pretty brutal price action, right? And we know that this is just what's going on in the equities market, and we might get a nice bounce right here sitting at 55.10. Price could head up, but I would look to probably short that because everything looks bleak right now in futures. Everything looks bearish. Wednesday might be a surprise, but we have a support at 55.13 and at 53.90 or so. Price could bounce at either of those. Otherwise, I expect down. Let's take a look at the Dow Futures. Dow showing a little bit more resiliency right now compared to the other indices. It did gap down, but it's opening, and the last 3 or 4 candles are actually heading sideways. If you zoom in, you can see them. So the Dow showing a little more strength, but obviously NASDAQ is what seems to be the most bearish. NASDAQ is tech. So you have the Dow not being tech, more defensive type stocks, not exactly defensive necessarily, but the long story short is it's headed down, I think, just a little more slowly than the others, and we have a support right at 40,680. Now, I don't know if the price is really going to make it past that. It might bounce there a couple of times before it does. But if everything falls, and that is what it is. Let's take a look at the NASDAQ. Now this is where the blood is. It's done nothing but go down since the open and really since last week, and I do expect price to maybe find a little bit of support around 18,280, but I think it's just going to continue down and possibly much more quickly than what I drew. But usually these types of moves do get stopped and you get a little sideways before it heads down. So unless conditions change out in the world, I do expect 18,275 and even possibly below 18 into the mid to low 17s by the end of the week. Let's see what happens there. Let's take a look at gold. Gold opening up to all-time highs, crushing it. 3,100, it's gone up even since I started drawing this, and I do expect it to head up further. Now, it's going to be tough to really push it, I think, past 3,200. It could, and this is probably going to have to do with geopolitics more than anything. A lot of money going into gold right now, a lot of gold being bought by the major powers. So let's see if it in fact can rather go up than sideways. But I do expect it to kind of slow down, go sideways and head up. And I do expect it maybe to get a little bit of a slam down, if not a slowdown, from the powers that be, because that's just is what to be expected. But right now, it's at an all-time high, sky's the limit, and we might even see some FOMO. Might be good for some people, bad for others. Let's see what happens. Let's take a look at silver. Okay, silver approaching its recent high. Now, silver being above 32 is usually a difficult prospect, but it stayed above 32, and it has stayed above 32 for almost 3 weeks. If this continues, if silver stays above 32 for more than a month or two, then we might see a lot of FOMO in silver, because that means that the powers that be have been holding it down below 32, no longer have the power to do so. Otherwise, we might see a nice big slam down. So things could have to change pretty drastically for price at this point to go down below 30. 30's getting pretty far into the past here. Gold making all-time highs, metals really going up, and this actually has me concerned from a geopolitical standpoint, because to me that looks like a hot war. I hate to say it. Don't want it. I don't agree with war. I hope war will never ever happen anywhere. Unfortunately, what I hope and what happened are not necessarily the same thing. I will put out my vibe to say, let's have no more people die. That's the vibe. But until such things happen, we're going to be looking at these charts, and we're going to be predicting where these go. And precious metals, to me, is a great insurance policy against such things. So that's the charts for this week. And as you can see, I'm pretty good at predicting where these go. I do this knowing a couple of things. For one thing, I've got Via the Gorilla, my business partner, and that guy does a lot of big deals with precious metals and crypto around the world. So he gets intel from people, and we find out in Algo Factory's private live lab, which isn't open to the public. We find out from him what he's able to learn, and it has really shaped the level of our success that we have seen going back the last couple of years since Algo Factory's been around, and it has been around for 2 years now. So just had a 2-year anniversary. That's awesome. If you want to learn how I can use the data on these charts, like all this gobbledygook down here, to predict where price is going to go, and as you can see, I'm pretty darn good at it, come on over to algofactory.tech. First thing you can do is go into the description, click that link, get your free algo. I'll email it to you, and I'll also have you on the email list learning when we're going to do our next workshop. We do a workshop every so often now, whether people watch me trade for a few days in a row, for a few hours a day. And if you want to just jump on in, learn how to build your own trading method, you don't have to know how to code or anything like that. Some people do. Some people want to automate their trading. Most I find are not interested. They just want to trade it the old way, and we can help you get into that and be very good at getting into that. We pretty much kick ass. Just come and check us out, algofactory.tech. Learn how to trade like a hedge fund pro. Thanks for watching. We'll see you Tuesday morning, bright and early, 8:30 a.m. sharp.